Audrey, 32 years old, and to the outside world, I am nothing more than a struggling freelance illustrator who spends too much time daydreaming in her sketchbook. My husband likes to tell people I am delicate artistic and entirely dependent on his stability to survive the real world. He introduces me at parties with a sympathetic smile, the kind one gives to a child who still believes in fairy tales. What he does not know, and what I have spent the last 3 years carefully hiding behind layers of shell companies and offshore trusts, is that the digital art platform he uses to launder his small gambling winnings was actually founded by me. I am not just an illustrator. I am the silent majority shareholder of ArtNet Global, with a net worth that would make his knees buckle. But to him, I am just Audrey, the wife who forgets to pay the electric bill. Every night I woke up and saw my husband standing beside my bed staring at me while I slept. For weeks, I thought it was just his insomnia, or perhaps a weird manifestation of stress. I would stir, and he would quickly slip back under the covers, pretending to be asleep. But last Tuesday was different. The air in the bedroom was heavy and cold. I lay on my side, facing the window, my breathing shallow and rhythmic, feigning a deep slumber. I felt the mattress dip. The weight was significant, pressing down right beside my hip. He was not just standing there. He was leaning over me. I could feel his breath hot and smelling faintly of scotch fanning against my ear. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was terrified he would hear it, but I forced my muscles to remain limp. I kept my eyelids heavy, leaving only the tiniest sliver open beneath the lashes. Through the darkness, I saw the glint of a syringe in his hand. He didn't use it. He just held it there, hovering over my arm as if practicing. Then he leaned in closer, his lips brushing the stray hairs on my temple. "Be patient, Liam," he whispered to himself, though the words were directed at my sleeping form. "Just 3 more doses, sweetheart. Then the doctors will declare you incompetent, and I will finally get that power of attorney signature." My blood turned to ice. It wasn't insomnia. It wasn't love. It was a countdown. He wasn't watching me sleep. He was watching me fade. I lay there for 3 more hours after he fell asleep, staring at the wall, listening to the snoring of a man who was systematically poisoning me to steal a fortune he didn't even realize I possessed. Before I tell you how I turned his own trap into a prison he will never escape, hit that subscribe button if you believe that underestimating a quiet woman is the most dangerous mistake a man can ever make. The next morning, the sunlight streamed into our kitchen, bouncing off the quartz countertops I had paid for with a single dividend check 3 years ago. Liam was already up. He stood by the blender humming a tune, the picture of a devoted husband. The noise of the blades crushing kale and ice filled the room, masking the sound of my footsteps. I watched him for a moment. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small vial of clear liquid, and tipped 3 drops into the green sludge. He swirled it around before pouring it into my favorite ceramic mug. I walked in, rubbing my eyes, playing the part of the groggy, confused wife. "Good morning," I mumbled, pulling my silk robe tighter around me. Liam turned his smile bright and practiced. "Morning, sleeping beauty. You were tossing and turning all night again. I made you your detox smoothie. You need to flush out those toxins, Audrey. You look pale." He slid the mug across the island. The green liquid bubbled slightly. I looked at it, then up at him. His eyes were wide, filled with a concern that looked terrified to anyone else, but to me it looked like anticipation. "I feel fine, Liam," I said, reaching for the mug. My hand trembled intentionally. "See, look at your hands," he said, seizing the moment. "You are shaking, Audrey. It is the stress. You spend too much time in that studio with those paint fumes. It is affecting your nervous system. Drink up. It will help clarify your mind." I brought the mug to my lips. The smell was earthy, masking whatever chemical agent he was using to make me appear unstable. I pretended to take a large gulp, but I let the liquid sit in my cheeks. "It tastes a bit bitter today," I said, lowering the mug. "It is the kale," he said quickly. Too quickly. "It is a new organic blend. Very potent. Drink it all, honey. I have a big day at the realty office, and I need to know you are taking care of yourself." He turned to grab his briefcase. In that split second, I spat the mouthful into the thick paper napkin I was holding and shoved it deep into the pocket of my robe. When he turned back, I wiped my mouth and gave him a weak, grateful smile. "Thank you for taking care of me, Liam. I don't know what I would do without you." "You would be lost, Audrey," he said, kissing my forehead. "You would be absolutely lost. Now try to rest today. Don't go out. You know how you get confused in crowds lately." He left the apartment whistling. As soon as the elevator doors chimed shut, I poured the rest of the smoothie into a sample jar I had hidden in the pantry. I wasn't confused. I was collecting evidence. But the attacks on my sanity were only just beginning. That evening, the assault on my peace escalated from chemical warfare to a full-scale invasion. I was in the living room sketching on my tablet when the front door burst open. I hadn't agreed to guests. I hadn't even been asked. But there was Liam holding the door open for his sister Jessica and her husband Dante. They didn't just walk in, they spilled in. Jessica was dragging 2 massive suitcases that left black scuff marks on the pristine white marble floor. Dante, a man who constantly wore sunglasses indoors and spoke in buzzwords he learned from TikTok finance gurus, was carrying a box of sneakers and a gaming console. Surprise, Liam announced, though his tone suggested this was a decree, not a request. I stood up, clutching my tablet. "Liam, what is going on?" Jessica dropped her bags with a loud thud. "Oh, don't give us that look, Audrey. Our condo is being fumigated. Toxic mold. Can you believe it? We need a place to crash for a few weeks. Liam said you wouldn't mind since you're here all day doing nothing anyway." She didn't wait for an answer. She walked past me, her eyes scanning the living room with open disdain. She kicked off her heels, leaving them right in the center of the walkway, and flopped onto my beige Italian sofa. "God, this place is so sterile," she groaned, digging her feet into the cushions. "It looks like a hospital waiting room. You really have zero taste in decor, Audrey. It is so boring." Dante followed her lead. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window looking out at the Chicago skyline. He tapped on the glass with his class ring, a nervous tic he had whenever he was about to lie. "Nice view," he said, not looking at me. "But you guys are renting, right? Liam told me you guys are burning cash on rent. You know paying rent is like setting money on fire. I have been telling Liam he needs to leverage his assets into crypto. I have this new coin launching next week, total game changer. If you guys weren't so liquid poor, I would let you in on the pre-sale." I took a deep breath, calculating my next move. This apartment wasn't rented. I owned the entire top floor. I had bought it cash under an LLC name 3 years ago. Liam thought we were renting it from a wealthy client of mine who gave us a discount. "Liam," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, "we have a guest room, but it is set up as my archives. I have important documents in there. You should have asked me." Liam laughed, walking over to the bar cart to pour himself a drink. "Asked you, Audrey, come on. It is family. Besides, what documents?" "Your old sketches. Those little cartoons aren't exactly state secrets. Jessica and Dante need help. We are the ones doing well, so we help family. That is how it works." Doing well. Liam had maxed out 2 credit cards last month, and I had quietly paid them off to avoid a credit score dip for the household address. Dante and Jessica were here because they had likely been evicted, not because of mold. I could smell the desperation on them. "I am hungry," Jessica announced. "Audrey, what is for dinner? Please tell me you didn't make that organic slop. Liam says you eat." "I haven't cooked," I said. "I wasn't expecting 6 people." Jessica rolled her eyes and stood up. She walked toward the hallway leading to the bedrooms. "Fine. I will just go freshen up. Where is the guest bath? Actually, I will just use yours. The lighting is better." "Jessica, wait," I said, stepping forward. "My personal items are in there." She ignored me. She pushed past me and disappeared into the master suite. I heard drawers opening and closing. The disrespect was physical, visceral. I looked at Liam, expecting him to set boundaries. Instead, he was clinking glasses with Dante. "Let her be, Audrey," Liam said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "Stop being so territorial. It is weird. You're acting paranoid again." Paranoid. That was the word of the week. 10 minutes later, Jessica emerged. She had applied a fresh layer of makeup. My makeup. Her lips were coated in my limited edition lipstick, and she was holding a jar of my night cream, a jar that cost $600. "This stuff is decent," she said, tossing the jar up and catching it. "A bit heavy for my skin type, but better than the drugstore trash I thought you would use. I am going to keep this in the guest room. You barely use it anyway. I saw dust on the lid. "That is mine, Jessica," I said, my hand extending slightly. "Please give it back." Jessica laughed a high-pitched grating sound. She looked at Liam. "Wow, she is really stingy, isn't she?" "It is half empty, Audrey. God, you are so petty. No wonder you have no friends." "Give it to her," Liam said. But he wasn't talking to Jessica. He was looking at me. "Let her have the cream, Audrey. Don't embarrass me right now. You are making a scene over moisturizer. It is pathetic." Dante chimed in from the couch, where he now had his feet up on the coffee table, shoes still on. "Seriously, Audrey, you should be grateful we are here to liven this place up. You walk around like a ghost. Liam tells us he has to carry the conversation every night. It must be exhausting for him." I looked at the three of them, the unholy trinity of my life. Liam, the failed realtor, playing the king. Jessica, the failed influencer, playing the critic. Dante, the unemployed hustler, playing the tycoon. They were eating my food, sitting on my furniture, and breathing my air, all while convinced I was the parasite. The anger flared in my chest, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I needed them comfortable. I needed them arrogant. If I kicked them out now, they would just leave. I didn't want them to leave. I wanted them to fall. I lowered my hand. "Fine," I said softly. "Keep it." Jessica smirked and dropped the jar into her pocket. "Thanks. Maybe if you used it more often, you wouldn't look so tired." Liam walked over and wrapped an arm around my shoulder, his grip tight, possessive and warning. "Good girl." "See, was that so hard? Now go order us some pizza, use the emergency card, and try not to mess up the toppings this time." I walked into the kitchen away from their laughter. I picked up my phone. I didn't open the pizza delivery app. I opened the security app for the apartment. I activated the internal cameras in the living room and guest room, setting them to record audio and video in high definition. If they wanted to turn my home into a stage for their cruelty, I would make sure I had a front row seat to their performance. And more importantly, I would make sure I had the footage for the finale. As I pretended to order the pizza, I could hear Dante whispering to Liam in the living room, "She is totally out of it, bro. You were right." Liam's voice was lower, but the high-end microphone in the smart thermostat picked it up clearly. "I told you, the pills are working. She is pliable. Give it 2 weeks with you guys causing chaos, and she will snap. Once she has a public meltdown, I call the paramedics, we file the 5150 hold, and the power of attorney is mine. Then we sell this place, dump her in a facility upstate, and split the cash." I stood in the kitchen staring at the reflection of my face in the darkened oven door. They thought they were breaking me. They thought they were pushing me to the edge of sanity, but all they were doing was handing me the shovel to dig their graves. I ordered the pizza, pepperoni for them, nothing for me. I needed to stay hungry. The next few days were a blur of calculated psychological torture. They moved like a pack of wolves circling a wounded deer. Jessica took over the bathroom, leaving wet towels on the floor and using my expensive serums as body lotion. Dante turned the living room into his personal command center, shouting into his phone about non-existent deals while watching sports at maximum volume. Liam played the conductor, orchestrating their abuse while playing the victim to anyone who would listen. On Thursday, I came home from a fake meeting. I told them I was meeting an art tutor, but I was actually at the bank finalizing the foreclosure paperwork on the condo Jessica and Dante had just lost, to find them in my studio. My studio was the one room I had asked them not to enter. It was locked, or at least it had been. The door was wide open. The lock had been picked. I stood in the doorway, my bag slipping from my shoulder. Jessica was sitting at my drafting table, using my professional-grade markers to color in a coloring book she had bought. Dante was leaning against my flat files, using one of my original canvas sketches as a coaster for his beer. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. This time, I didn't have to fake the tremor. Jessica didn't even look up. We got bored. The Wi-Fi in the living room is spotty. It is better in here. Besides, these markers are fun. "Why do you hide them in here?" Dante burped, tapping ash from a cigar. A cigar, onto the floor. "Relax, Audrey. We are just chilling. You are not even using this stuff. Liam said you haven't sold a painting in 2 years. That was true. I hadn't sold a painting. I sold digital rights. But seeing Dante's condensation ring soaking into the paper of a sketch I had spent 40 hours on triggered something visceral in me. "Get out," I said. Excuse me. Jessica laughed. She stopped coloring and looked at me with mock surprise. I said, "Get out of my studio, now." Liam appeared behind me. He must have been in the hallway. Whoa, whoa. Lower your voice, Audrey. You are screaming. I am not screaming, I said, turning to face him. They broke the lock. Liam, this is my workspace. Workspace. Liam scoffed. He stepped into the room, crowding me. Audrey, let's be real. This is a playroom. You are a hobbyist. These two are family. You are treating them like criminals for sitting in a room you barely used to produce nothing of value. He picked up a sketchbook from the table, my ledger disguised as a sketchbook. My heart stopped. If he opened it, he would see the account numbers. This, Liam said, waving the book. What is in here? More doodles of sad girls. Give that to me, I said, reaching for it. Liam held it high above his head, taunting me. A grown man taunting his wife like a schoolyard bully. You want it? Jump for it. Show some passion, Audrey. Jessica and Dante cackled. The sound was ugly, sharp, and degrading. He tossed the book to Dante. Dante caught it, spilling beer on the floor in the process. Oops, Dante grinned. My bad. I looked at the puddle of beer seeping into the floorboards. I looked at Jessica destroying my markers. I looked at Liam, who was watching me with that predatory glint waiting for me to explode. He wanted me to scream. He wanted me to throw something. He wanted the neighbors to hear the crazy wife losing her mind. I closed my eyes. I took a breath. I visualized the bank accounts. I visualized the eviction notice I had in my purse. I visualized the new security team I had hired, who were currently stationed in the lobby of the building, waiting for my signal. I opened my eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smoothed my skirt. It is fine, I said. The tone was flat, dead. The room went silent. They were disappointed. They wanted fireworks, and I gave them ash. I said, it is fine, I repeated. Just try not to spill any more beer. I have a headache. I am going to lie down. I turned and walked away. I heard them laughing as I walked down the hall. She is broken, Dante said. Totally broken. She is pathetic, Jessica added. Almost there, Liam whispered. I walked into the bedroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. I opened the app for the hidden cameras in the studio. I watched them on the screen. Dante was wiping the beer with one of my canvases. Liam was kissing Jessica on the cheek, congratulating her on the performance. I pressed the save button. Then I opened my email. I composed a message to my lawyer. Subject: Activation of Phase 2. Body: They have breached the studio. The assets are at risk. Accelerate the timeline. I want them out by Saturday, and bring the papers for the car. The one Liam thinks is in his name. I hit send. Saturday was my birthday. Liam had insisted on throwing me a party. He invited all his friends. He invited his business partners. He said it was to celebrate me, but I knew what it was. It was the main event. It was the stage where he planned to humiliate me so thoroughly that no judge would deny him guardianship. He thought he was throwing me a party. I knew it was going to be his funeral. I lay back on the pillows, the same pillows he had leaned over the night before. I closed my eyes, but this time I wasn't pretending to sleep. I was resting. I needed my energy. Because on Saturday, the mouse was going to eat the cat. The lock on my studio door had been broken, but the lock on my emotions was tighter than ever. While Liam, Jessica, and Dante went out for a celebratory dinner using my credit card, which Liam thought was his emergency fund, I did not sit in the corner and cry. I went to work. I had approximately 2 hours before they returned, drunk and careless. That was 90 minutes more than I needed. I went to the safe hidden behind the master bedroom vanity mirror. It was biometric, opening only to my fingerprint. Inside lay the tools of my trade, not paintbrushes or pencils, but the high-definition surveillance equipment I used to monitor the secure servers of my company. I took out 3 microcameras, each no larger than a button, and a parabolic microphone capable of picking up a whisper from 2 rooms away. I moved through the penthouse with surgical precision. I placed the first camera inside the ventilation vent, directly above the main sofa in the living room. I placed the second one disguised as a screw on the underside of the kitchen island. The third went into the eye of a decorative owl statue on the bookshelf, directly facing the armchair where Liam liked to sit and lord over his kingdom. I sync the feeds to a secure cloud server accessible only via my encrypted tablet. Then I retreated to the guest bedroom, the one Jessica had claimed but was currently empty, and tested the audio. It was crystal clear. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear the settle of the building. I was ready. When the front door opened at 11:30 at night, I was already in bed, lights out, breathing evenly. But under the duvet, the tablet was glowing against my chest. I put in my wireless earbud. The show was about to begin. They stumbled in, loud and reckless. I watched the screen. Liam was loosening his tie, his face flushed with alcohol and adrenaline. Dante was pacing, looking less celebratory and more agitated. Jessica had gone straight to the bathroom to vomit, leaving the two men alone in the living room. Perfect. Dante threw himself onto the sofa right under camera one. He rubbed his face with his hands, the friction sounding like sandpaper through my earbud. "We need to talk about the timeline," Liam. Dante said, his voice tight. "Vinny called me again. He is not happy. He said if we do not have the first installment by the end of the month, he is going to start breaking fingers. And since I introduced you to him, he is going to start with mine." I watched Liam walk to the bar cart. He poured himself a scotch, his hand steady. He looked like a man without a care in the world, which was terrifying because it meant he was completely delusional. "Relax, Dante," Liam said, taking a sip. "You are so jittery. It makes you look weak. Vinny will wait. I told him we have a major asset liquidation coming up." "Liquidation?" Dante scoffed. "You mean the house, Liam? Are you sure about the deed? You keep saying she inherited it from her grandmother, but have you actually seen the paperwork?" I smiled in the dark. That was the lie I had planted 3 years ago. I had told Liam that my late grandmother left me this penthouse in a trust, but that I couldn't sell it for 5 years. He believed it because he wanted to believe I was a lucky trust fund baby, not a self-made woman. "I have seen enough," Liam said, walking over to the armchair and sitting down. The camera in the owl statue caught his face perfectly. His eyes were cold, devoid of any affection I thought I had seen over the years. "The 5-year clause expires next month. As soon as I get power of attorney, I can list this place. It is worth $2.5 million easy. We pay Vinny his 500 grand, we pay off your stupid crypto debts, and we still have enough to live like kings in Miami." Dante sat up, leaning forward. "Okay, but that hinges on the power of attorney. You need her signature, Liam, or a court order. She might be quiet, but she is not catatonic. If she refuses to sign, we are dead." Liam laughed. It was a low, ugly sound. "She is not going to refuse." "Have you seen her lately? The detox smoothie is doing its job." I upped the dosage of the scopolamine and the tranquilizers. "She is foggy, Dante. She loses time. Yesterday she thought it was Sunday when it was Tuesday." My hand tightened around the tablet. So that was it? Scopolamine, the devil's breath. He wasn't just sedating me. He was trying to wipe my memory and make me suggestible. Dante looked at Liam with a mixture of admiration and fear. "You are sick, man. That is your wife. She is an investment that needs to mature." Liam corrected him, swirling the ice in his glass. "And she is almost ripe. The plan is simple. Tomorrow at the party, she's going to have a public episode. I have set it up. The lights will be too bright, the music too loud. I will give her a double dose before the guests arrive. She will crack. Everyone will see crazy Audrey. Then I bring in Dr. Evans on Monday. He is already on the payroll. He declares her a danger to herself. We commit her to that facility in Rockford. Once she is inside, getting the emergency guardianship is a rubber stamp." I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He had planned it all: the isolation, the gaslighting, the eventual imprisonment. He didn't just want my money. He wanted to erase me. Dante stood up and walked to the window. He looked nervous. "I don't know, Liam. Are you sure that girl is as stupid as you say? What if she wakes up? What if she realizes what you are feeding her? She is quiet, but sometimes she looks at you with these eyes, like she is analyzing you." Liam waved his hand dismissively. "Don't be paranoid. That is her problem, not ours. She doesn't analyze anything. She sketches cartoons and dreams about fairy tales. She is weak, Dante. She needs me. She trusts me blindly. She thinks I am her savior. She thinks I am the only thing standing between her and the abyss. She would never suspect me because she doesn't think I am smart enough to pull this off. I froze the frame on the tablet. I zoomed in on Liam's face, the arrogance, the smug satisfaction. He was right about one thing. I didn't think he was smart enough. I had underestimated his capacity for evil because I was projecting my own morality onto him. But he was wrong about the most important detail. I didn't think he was my savior. I knew he was my parasite. Dante turned back from the window. And the insurance. That is the cherry on top, Liam said, finishing his drink. Once she is institutionalized, I can cash out the critical illness rider on her life insurance policy. Another $300,000. We are going to be rich, brother. We just have to survive this weekend. The bathroom door opened, and Jessica came out wiping her mouth. God, I hate tequila, she groaned. What are you guys whispering about? Are we rich yet? Soon, Jess, Liam said, standing up to hug her. Go to sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. We need Audrey to look her absolute worst, so I need you to be your absolute best at irritating her. Consider it done, Jessica smirked. I will wear that red dress she hates. The one she said was too revealing. I will tell her she looks like a nun next to me. They laughed. All three of them. They laughed about selling my home, spending my money, and locking me away in a padded room. I stopped the recording. I saved the file to 3 different secure locations, the cloud and external drive in the safe, and automatically emailed to my lawyer's private server. I took the earbud out. The silence in the bedroom was heavy, but it was no longer frightening. It was the silence of a courtroom before the gavel drops. I lay back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling. Liam owed $500,000 to loan sharks. He had committed insurance fraud conspiracy to commit fraud and was actively poisoning me. He thought the game was about making me look crazy. He didn't realize the game had changed. He wanted a show, I would give him a show. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I rehearsed. I visualized every moment of the party tomorrow. I wouldn't just be attending. I would be directing. Liam thought I was the damsel in distress. He was about to find out that I was the dragon, and tomorrow I was going to burn his entire kingdom to the ground. The party was not a celebration. It was an ambush disguised as a social gathering. By 7 p.m, our penthouse was filled with strangers. These were not my friends. There was not a single person in the room who knew my favorite color, or that I was allergic to strawberries, or that I had built a tech empire from a laptop in a coffee shop. These were Liam's people. They were real estate sharks in cheap suits, women who looked me up and down with sneering pity, and potential investors he was trying to impress with a lifestyle he could not afford. The music was too loud, a thumping bass that rattled the crystals on the chandelier. The lighting was too bright, designed to expose every flaw. I stood by the balcony door wearing a white silk dress that Liam had picked out. He said it made me look angelic. I knew he chose it because it made me look fragile, like a porcelain doll ready to be shattered. I watched them circulate. They whispered behind their hands, eyes darting in my direction. I knew the narrative Liam had spun. Poor Liam, saddled with a wife who is losing her mind, a wife who hallucinates, a wife who is a burden. I could see it in the way they smiled at me, tight, patronizing smiles that did not reach their eyes. Liam emerged from the kitchen holding 2 crystal flutes. He was beaming the picture of the doting husband. He made his way through the crowd, stopping to shake hands and accept condolences for a tragedy that hadn't even happened yet. He approached me, blocking my exit from the corner. "Happy birthday, darling," he said, his voice loud enough to attract attention. He held out a glass. The liquid inside bubbled with a pinkish hue. "I made this one special for you," he announced, ensuring the group of investors standing nearby could hear. "It is a non-alcoholic blend. I know how sensitive you have been lately with everything. I want you to have a clear head tonight." He was lying. I had watched him on the hidden camera feed 10 minutes ago. He had crushed 2 pills into a fine powder and dissolved them into this specific glass. It was a potent hallucinogen mixed with a sedative. He wanted me to slur my words. He wanted me to stumble. He wanted me to scream at things that weren't there. "Thank you, Liam," I said, taking the glass. My hand was steady. "You are so thoughtful." He clinked his glass against mine. "To us," he said, staring into my eyes with a predatory intensity, And to your health. Drink up, sweetheart." He didn't drink his. He just watched me. He was waiting for me to take the first sip. I lifted the glass to my lips, but then I paused. I widened my eyes, looking past his shoulder at the entrance to the kitchen. "Liam, is that the catering manager?" I asked, pointing with my free hand. "I think he is looking for you. Something about the payment card being declined." The color drained from Liam's face. The mention of money always triggered his panic. He spun around, distracted, searching the crowd for a problem that didn't exist. In that singular second of his vanity and fear, I acted. I didn't need magic, I just needed geometry. I set my glass down on the high-top table beside us, right next to his glass, which he had momentarily lowered to adjust his jacket. With a fluid motion practiced 1,000 times in my mind, I slid his glass to my side and mine to his. The liquid was identical. The levels were identical. Liam turned back to me, relieved. "I don't see him. You must be seeing things again, Audrey." He picked up the glass closest to him, the glass I had just placed there. "Maybe I am," I whispered. "I am so sorry." No, it is okay," he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Just drink your juice, honey. It will help you relax." I lifted the glass, his original glass, to my lips and took a small sip. It was just sparkling cider. Liam, satisfied that I was obeying him, took a massive gulp of his own drink. The drug-laced cocktail went down his throat in one smooth swallow. "Good girl," he said, patting my arm. "Now mingle. Try to act normal." He walked away, the poison already coursing through his blood. I watched him go, feeling a cold, hard satisfaction settle in my chest. The clock had started. But the assault wasn't over. Liam was just the general. He had sent his soldiers to the front line. Jessica appeared out of nowhere. She was wearing a red dress that clashed violently with the decor. She held a large glass of dark Cabernet Sauvignon. She didn't look at me. She looked through me. She moved with a calculated clumsiness, swaying as if she were drunker than she actually was. "Hey, birthday girl," she slurred, stumbling toward me. I knew what was coming. I braced myself. Jessica tripped over nothing. She lunged forward and the contents of her glass launched into the air. The dark red wine splashed across the front of my white silk dress like a gunshot wound. It soaked into the fabric, instantly cold and wet against my skin. The music didn't stop, but the conversation did. Everyone turned. "Oh my God!" Jessica shrieked, dropping her glass. It shattered on the floor. "Audrey, what is wrong with you? Why did you push me?" I stood perfectly still, my hands at my sides. I hadn't touched her. I hadn't moved an inch. "I didn't push you, Jessica," I said calmly. "Liar," she screamed, playing to the gallery. "You just shoved me. Look at this mess. You are so unstable. Liam told us you were getting violent, but I didn't believe him until now." She was good. I had to give her that. She was creating a scene, framing me as the aggressor. The guests murmured. I heard the whispers. "She attacked her sister-in-law. She looks crazy. Look at her eyes. Poor Liam." From the other side of the room, a bright light blinded me. It was Dante. He was holding his phone up, broadcasting live to his 3,000 followers. "Yo guys, check this out!" Dante's voice boomed over the hushed crowd. "My brother-in-law's wife is losing it again. Just attacked my wife at her own birthday party. This is what we deal with every day. Mental illness is real, folks. It is sad. Look at her. She's just standing there, totally dissociated." He shoved the phone camera into my face. "Say hi to the stream, Audrey. Tell everyone why you are ruining the night." I looked into the lens. I didn't blink, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared, letting the eerie calmness radiate through the screen. "I hope you are recording this, Dante," I said softly. "You are going to want to keep this for the evidence folder." Dante laughed, pulling the camera back. "See? She is talking nonsense. Evidence folder. She thinks she is in a spy movie." Sad. Just then a crash echoed from the center of the room. It was Liam. The drugs were hitting him faster than I expected. Perhaps mixing them with alcohol had accelerated the chemical reaction. He had been standing by the buffet table holding court with 2 potential investors. Now he was gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "Liam," one of the investors asked. "Are you all right?" Liam's head snapped up. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated to the size of saucers. Sweat was beading on his forehead. He looked at the investor, but he didn't see a man in a suit. He saw something else. "Get them off me!" Liam shouted, swatting at the air. The room fell silent. Liam stumbled back, knocking over a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Get the spiders off me! They are under my skin!" He began to claw at his own neck, scratching red welts into his skin. He was hallucinating. The specific combination he had prepared for me was designed to induce paranoia and tactile hallucinations. He was experiencing exactly what he had intended for me. Jessica ran over to him, forgetting her fake injury. "Liam, what is happening?" Liam shoved her away with surprising force. Jessica flew back, landing on the sofa. "Don't touch me! You are one of them!" Liam screamed. His voice was guttural, terrified. He looked around the room, his gaze wild. "Where is she? Where is the witch?" "She put the spiders in the bank account." He pointed a shaking finger at an empty corner of the room. "Stop laughing at me!" he yelled at the empty space. "I am the king. I signed the papers." The guests were backing away, horror on their faces. But here was the twist, the knife in my heart, that proved how deep his manipulation went. They didn't look at him with judgment. They looked at me with accusation. One of Liam's friends, a tall man named Marcus, turned to me. "What did you do to him?" I stood there, the wine stain on my dress drying into a crust. I haven't been near him. He is stressed out of his mind because of you," Marcus shouted. "Look at him. He is having a breakdown because he has been carrying you for years. You finally broke him. Even in his madness, Liam was the victim. Even when he was the one screaming about spiders and kings, I was the villain." They were so conditioned to see me as the problem that they twisted reality to fit his narrative. Liam fell to his knees, sobbing. "The money is melting. The walls are melting." I walked over to him. The crowd parted, afraid of me. I knelt down beside him. I didn't touch him. I just leaned close so only he could hear me amidst his screaming. "Liam," I whispered. He froze. He looked at me. For a second, the hallucination seemed to pause. He saw me. He saw the wine on my dress. He saw the calmness in my eyes. The drink, he rasped, his voice trembling. "The drink. I swapped them," I said simply. His eyes widened in absolute terror. Not the terror of the drugs, but the terror of clarity. He realized what had happened. He realized I knew. He tried to speak, to tell them, to scream that I had poisoned him, but his tongue was thick, heavy. She, he stammered, pointing at me. "Shh," I soothed, placing a hand on his shoulder. I looked up at the crowd, my face a mask of tragic concern. "Please, everyone," I said, my voice trembling perfectly. "Please give him space. He has been under so much pressure at work. He hasn't been sleeping. I think he is having a psychotic break." "No," Liam gargled, trying to push me away. "She did it. She is the devil." "See?" I said to Marcus. Tears finally welling in my eyes. "He doesn't know who I am. He is confused. Please, someone call an ambulance. My husband needs help." Dante was still filming, but his commentary had stopped. He looked confused. This wasn't the script. Liam was supposed to be the hero, not the lunatic on the floor. Jessica was crying, holding her arm where Liam had shoved her. "He is crazy," she whispered. "He is actually crazy." I stroked Liam's hair as he writhed on the floor, fighting invisible demons. "It is okay, honey," I cooed. "I am here. I am going to take care of you, just like you wanted to take care of me." Liam stared up at me, trapped in his own body, trapped in his own trap. He screamed a long, high-pitched sound of pure despair. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The party was over, but my performance had just begun. The guests looked at me with pity now, but it was a different kind. It was the pity for a wife who would have to care for a madman. They didn't know that the madman had just handed me the keys to his asylum. I looked directly into Dante's camera lens one last time. "Be careful what you wish for," I thought, knowing the audience couldn't hear me, because sometimes the person you are trying to bury is the one holding the shovel. The morning sun did not bring clarity to our penthouse. It brought a headache that I could practically see pulsing in the air. The remnants of the disastrous party lay scattered across the living room like the debris of a shipwreck. Broken glass, stained napkins, and the lingering, sickly sweet smell of stale champagne and vomit. Liam sat at the kitchen island clutching a mug of black coffee as if it were a lifeline. His skin was gray, his eyes bloodshot and rimmed with red. The after effects of the drug cocktail I had fed him had mostly worn off, leaving him with a chemical hangover that made his hands tremble. But the confusion was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. He remembered everything. He remembered the spiders. He remembered the screaming. But in true narcissist fashion, he had already rewritten the script in his head. In his version of reality, his breakdown was my fault. I stood by the window wearing a simple gray cardigan and jeans, holding my own cup of tea. I watched him. I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, a physical weight pressing down on his shoulders. The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, intrusive sound at 9 on a Sunday morning. Liam didn't jump. He expected it. He set his mug down with a clatter. "Get the door, Audrey," he commanded. His voice was raspy, stripped of the fake sweetness he usually coated it with. I walked to the foyer. I checked the monitor. Standing outside was a man I recognized not from any medical directory, but from the surveillance footage of the underground poker game Liam frequented in the meatpacking district. His name was not Dr. Evans, as Liam had claimed last week. It was Gary. Gary the grifter, a man who had lost his medical license 5 years ago for writing illegal prescriptions. I opened the door. Gary was wearing a suit that was slightly too large for him and carrying a leather briefcase that looked like a prop from a high school play. He adjusted his glasses, trying to look authoritative. "Mrs. Reynolds," he asked, clearing his throat. "I am Dr. Evans. Liam called me. Please come in," I said softly, stepping aside to let the wolf into the hen house. Liam stood up as we entered the kitchen. He didn't offer the doctor a seat. He just pointed to the table. "Sit down, Audrey," Liam said. I sat. I folded my hands in my lap, looking between the two men with wide, fearful eyes. "What is going on, Liam?" I asked. "Who is this?" "This is Dr. Evans," Liam said, leaning against the counter. "He is a specialist. He was at the party last night, Audrey. He saw everything." I frowned, feigning confusion. "But Liam, you were the one who was sick. You were screaming about spiders." Liam slammed his hand down on the counter. The noise echoed like a gunshot. "Stop it!" he shouted. "Stop gaslighting me. I was not screaming about spiders. You attacked Jessica. You tried to jump off the balcony. Dr. Evans had to restrain you." He was lying so boldly, so confidently, that if I hadn't been the one pulling the strings, I might have questioned my own sanity. That was his talent. He could sell ice to an Eskimo and convince them they were freezing. Gary cleared his throat and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents. "Mrs. Reynolds," he began, his voice shaky, but rehearsed. "I observed you closely last night. You exhibited classic signs of a psychotic break. Dissociation, violent outbursts, hallucinations. It is my professional opinion that you are a danger to yourself and others." He slid the papers across the marble table toward me. "What is this?" I whispered, looking down at the dense legal text. "It is a voluntary commitment form," Gary said. "It authorizes a 72-hour hold at the Whispering Pines psychiatric facility. It is for your own good. You need rest. You need medication adjustments." I looked up at Liam. Whispering Pines. I knew that place. It was a holding tank for the inconvenient relatives of the wealthy. People went in, but they rarely came out with their rights intact. "You want to lock me away?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I want to help you," Liam said, but his eyes were dead. "I cannot have you running around ruining my reputation, Audrey. Do you know how embarrassed I was last night? My investors were terrified of you. You are a liability." He walked around the table and stood behind me. I could feel his heat. He placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "Sign the papers, Audrey. If you sign voluntarily, we can keep this quiet. If you make me call the police and do an involuntary hold, it goes on public record. You don't want that. Think of your little drawings. You won't be able to work if you are legally declared insane by the state." I looked at the pen he placed next to the paper. It was a Mont Blanc, my Mont Blanc. He had stolen it from my desk. I don't think I am crazy, Liam," I stammered. "I feel fine today." "That is the sickness talking," Liam yelled, his patience snapping. He grabbed the back of my chair and spun it around so I was facing him. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee and the rot of his soul. "Listen to me," he hissed. "I am done playing nursemaid. I am done pretending that you are anything other than a millstone around my neck. You are going to sign this paper and you are going to go away for a while." And then what I asked, letting a tear slip down my cheek. "What happens to the house? What happens to us?" Liam straightened up, looking down at me with pure disgust. "There is no us, Audrey. There never was. There was just me carrying you. And as for the house, I am selling it. I am taking the money, and I am going to build a life that actually matters." He laughed a cruel, dry sound. Dr. Evans looked uncomfortable. "Liam, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Gary," Liam snapped. He turned back to me. "Sign it," he demanded. I looked at the paper again. Section 4, Transfer of Decision-Making Power. Section 5, Authorization of Asset Management During Treatment. It wasn't just a hospital admission, it was a surrender of my life. Why, I asked, my voice barely audible. "Why do you hate me so much?" Liam groaned, running a hand through his hair. He looked at the ceiling, then back at me, his face contorted with a mixture of pity and loathing. "Because you are pathetic, Audrey. Look at you. You are 32 years old and you dress like a librarian. You have no ambition. You have no fire. You are a mouse, a gray, boring little mouse." He leaned in closer, delivering the words that he thought would break me, the words that would be the final nail in the coffin of my resistance. "I am tired of looking at your face," he spat. "I am tired of your weakness. I need a woman who matches my level. I need a queen, not a charity case. I need your money to start a new life with the class I deserve, not to waste it paying for your paint sets and your therapy." He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. "You are nothing without me. So do the one useful thing you have ever done in your life. Sign the paper, give me the money, and disappear." I looked into his eyes. I searched for a shred of humanity, a flicker of the man I thought I had married 3 years ago. There was nothing, just greed, just a hollow, bottomless hunger for things he hadn't earned. He called me a mouse. He thought I was weak because I was quiet. He thought I was stupid because I was kind. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't a snap, it was a click, like a vault door locking into place. The fear I had been projecting, the trembling I had been faking it all, evaporated. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I pulled my chin out of his grip. I didn't jerk it away, I just removed it slowly, deliberately. I picked up the pen. I held it, feeling the weight of the expensive resin. Liam smiled, thinking he had won. "Good girl, just sign on the line at the bottom." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at Gary, who was sweating profusely. Then I looked at Liam. My posture changed. I straightened my spine. My shoulders went back. The shy, hunching artist vanished. In her place sat the CEO of ArtNet Global. I stopped blinking. I stared at Liam until his smile faltered. "You are right, Liam," I said. My voice was no longer a whisper. It was a smooth, low alto, steady as a heartbeat. What Liam asked, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere. "You are right," I repeated. "I have been pathetic. I have allowed a parasite to live in my house, eat my food, and spend my money for far too long." Liam took a step back. "What did you say?" I stood up. I didn't scramble up. I rose. Gracefully, powerfully. I was wearing flats and he was in boots, but suddenly I felt 10 feet tall. I walked over to the kitchen counter where I had left my tablet face down. I picked it up. "You want a signature, Liam?" I asked, turning to face him. "Yes," he said, his voice uncertain now. "Sign the paper, Audrey. Don't make this difficult." I looked at the commitment form. I picked it up with 2 fingers as if it were a soiled tissue and dropped it into the trash can. "I will sign," I said, locking eyes with him. "But not that paper." I tapped the screen of my tablet. The printer in the hallway office whirred to life. It was a fast, rhythmic sound. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Liam looked at the hallway, then back at me. "What is that? What are you printing?" I smiled. But it wasn't the weak smile of his wife. It was the shark-like smile of a woman who had just closed a hostile takeover. I am printing the real paperwork, Liam. The paperwork that explains why Gary here is going to lose his freedom for impersonating a medical professional. And the paperwork that explains why you are going to need a very good lawyer. I walked toward him, and for the first time in our marriage, he took a step back. You called me a mouse, I said, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. But you forgot one thing about mice, Liam. They carry diseases that can kill you, and they know how to survive in the dark better than you ever could. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I am ready to sign, I said into the receiver. Bring them in. I turned my back on the confusion I had just orchestrated in the kitchen. Behind me, I could hear the heavy footsteps of my private security team entering the apartment, the thud of Gary's briefcase hitting the floor, and Liam's stammering protests fading as the heavy oak door of my study clicked shut. The sound of the lock engaging was the most satisfying sound I had heard in 3 years. It was the sound of a vault closing, sealing the dangerous elements out, and trapping the truth inside with me. I did not sit down. This was not a moment for rest. This was a moment for execution. I walked to the center of the room, the heels of my flats making no sound on the plush Persian rug. Another asset Liam thought was a cheap reproduction, but was actually an 18th century original. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were perfectly steady. The trembling mouse was gone. The predator had arrived. I dialed a number that was saved in my contacts simply as Sarah. She picked up on the first ring. Status, I said. No greeting, no pleasantries. Mrs. Reynolds. Sarah's voice came through crisp and professional. We are holding on line 2. The bank representatives are ready. Do it, I said, my voice dropping to a low, flat register. Execute Protocol 9. There was a pause on the other end, the kind of heavy silence that precedes a drone strike. Protocol 9. It was the nuclear option. It was a contingency plan I had designed 2 years ago, a financial maneuver so aggressive that my lawyers had asked me 3 times if I was sure I ever wanted to use it. Are you certain, ma'am? Sarah asked, her voice betraying a hint of hesitation. This will trigger immediate liquidity clauses. It will wipe out the standing credit lines for both subjects. It is irreversible. I walked over to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there in the grid of the city, Liam's creditors were waking up. I am certain, I said, watching a hawk circle a distant skyscraper. Purchase the debt, all of it. I want every cent Liam Reynolds owes to the casinos in Gary, Indiana. I want the marker he signed with the loan sharks in the South Side. I believe they operate under the shell company, Venture Capital Holdings. Buy it at premium if you have to. I want to be the one holding the leash. Understood, Sarah said. And Mr. Williams Dante. I said, saying his name like it was a bad taste in my mouth. Purchase the auto loans, purchase the credit card debt, and find out who holds the note on that failed crypto mining rig he set up in his garage. I want that too. Consolidate everything under the holding company, Nemesis LLC. I will have the transfer confirmations in your inbox in 5 minutes, Sarah said. Is there anything else? Yes, I said, turning away from the window. Freeze the joint accounts, leave them with 0 access, and flag any attempt to withdraw as fraudulent activity. Done. Good luck, Mrs. Reynolds. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. It was done. In less than 60 seconds, I had transitioned from being their victim to being their owner. They just didn't know it yet. They were still out there, probably arguing with my security team, thinking this was a misunderstanding, thinking they could talk their way out of it. They didn't realize that the ground beneath their feet had just been sold. I crossed the room to the far wall. Hanging there was a large abstract painting I had completed 6 months ago. It was a chaotic swirl of grays and blues titled The Storm. Liam hated it. He called it depressing. He said it looked like a bruise. He never looked closely enough to see that the brushstrokes were actually bars, and the blue was the color of a suffocating sky, and he certainly never looked closely enough to realize that the frame was hinged. I reached behind the canvas, my fingers finding the small concealed latch. With a soft click, the painting swung outward, revealing the cold steel face of a wall safe embedded in the concrete. This was the heart of the house. This was where the secrets lived. I placed my thumb on the scanner. A green light flashed. The bolts retracted with a heavy mechanical thud. I pulled the door open. The smell of old paper and crisp currency drifted out. I reached inside, bypassing the stacks of emergency cash and the velvet pouches of jewelry that Liam thought I had lost. My hand closed around a thick, leather-bound portfolio. I pulled it out and carried it to my mahogany desk. I set it down gently, treating it with the reverence one might offer a holy text. In a way it was. It was the scripture of my freedom. I opened the portfolio. On top lay the deed to the penthouse. I ran my fingers over the raised seal of the city clerk. Liam believed we were tenants paying exorbitant rent to a mysterious landlord named Mr. Blackwood. He had spent hours complaining about Mr. Blackwood, cursing the man for his strict rules and high fees. He never suspected that Mr. Blackwood was an anagram for my mother's maiden name. He never suspected that every rent check he wrote using money I had secretly funneled into his account was simply going back into my own trust. I owned the floor. I owned the walls. I owned the very air he was breathing. Beneath the deed were the incorporation papers for Reynolds Technologies. This was the document that would hurt him the most. He strutted around that office, firing people, making demands, acting like a captain of industry. He didn't know he was an employee. He didn't know that his employment contract had a morality clause so strict that his behavior at the party last night was grounds for immediate termination without severance. I turned the page. Here were the surveillance logs, transcripts of every conversation he had with Jessica about me, every insult, every plot, every time he called me a burden, every time he laughed about how easy I was to manipulate. I had printed them out on heavy watermarked paper. I wanted him to hold them. I wanted him to feel the weight of his own words. And at the bottom of the stack, the new additions. The debt purchase agreement Sarah had just finalized. I saw the numbers. Liam Reynolds, owing $480,000 to various illicit entities. Dante Williams, owing $82,000 in consumer debt and $40,000 in business loans. I picked up the red fountain pen sitting on my desk. It was heavy balanced and cold. I uncapped it. I signed my name on the line designated for the assignee. Audrey Sterling. Not Reynolds. Sterling. My name. The name he had tried to erase. With each signature, I felt a knot in my chest loosen. For 3 years, I had played the long game. I had bitten my tongue until it bled. I had allowed them to treat me like furniture, like a child, like a nuisance. I had let them gaslight me, drug me, and humiliate me. But I hadn't done it out of weakness. I had done it to gather ammunition. You cannot destroy a monster until it is fully exposed. You have to let it think it has won. You have to let it overextend. You have to wait until it is standing on the edge of the cliff, screaming its victory to the world before you can push it over. I closed the portfolio. The sound of the leather cover slapping shut echoed in the silent room. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my gray cardigan. I checked my reflection in the glass of the window. The woman staring back was not the Audrey they knew. Her eyes were hard. Her mouth was set in a line of grim determination. She looked like a judge walking into a sentencing hearing. I picked up the portfolio. It felt heavy like a weapon. I walked to the door. I could hear shouting in the hallway now. Liam was demanding answers. He was threatening to sue. He was making noise, the only thing he knew how to do. I unlocked the door. Protocol 9 was active. The trap was sprung. The cage was closed. It was time to go out there and tell the rats that the experiment was over. The sound of a champagne cork popping echoed down the hallway, followed immediately by the clinking of glasses and raucous laughter. It was a sound I knew well. It was the sound of prematurity. It was the sound of a team celebrating a touchdown while the game was still in the first quarter, completely unaware that the opposing coach had just rewritten the rule book. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the master bedroom. The gray cardigan and jeans lay in a heap on the floor, discarding the skin of the victim I had played so convincingly. In their place, I wore armor. It was a suit I had commissioned in Milan 3 years ago, a white wool blend with sharp architectural lapels and trousers that fell in a perfect knife-straight line. It was immaculate. It was severe. It was the kind of outfit that demanded silence when it entered a room. I pulled my hair back into a tight, low bun, exposing the sharp line of my jaw. I applied a coat of crimson lipstick, the color of war. I slipped my feet into 4-inch stilettos. I was no longer the shrinking violet. I was the thorn. I picked up the heavy leather portfolio from the desk. It contained the end of their world. I walked down the hallway. The laughter grew louder. To the mental hospital, Dante roared. To freedom, Jessica shrieked. To the money, Liam shouted, his voice thick with triumph. I stopped at the edge of the living room. They were sprawled across the furniture like conquerors. Liam was sitting on the main sofa, his boots resting on the coffee table, a cigar in one hand and a glass in the other. Jessica was draped over the armchair, scrolling on her phone, likely looking for expensive vacations she planned to book with my insurance money. Dante was pacing near the balcony, admiring the view he thought he had helped secure. They didn't see me at first. I stood there for a full 10 seconds just watching them. I watched them with the cold detachment of an exterminator assessing an infestation. Then the heel of my shoe clicked against the marble floor, a single sharp sound that cut through their noise like a gunshot. Liam turned his head lazily. When his eyes landed on me, he didn't just blink, he flinched. He dropped his cigar. It rolled off the table and onto the rug, but he didn't move to pick it up. He stared. He had never seen me like this. He had seen the wife in the apron. He had seen the artist in the smock. He had never seen the CEO. Jessica looked up, her mouth falling open. Dante froze mid-stride. The silence that descended on the room was heavy, suffocating. Liam was the first to recover, his arrogance overriding his confusion. He stood up, his face flushing with a mix of anger and bewilderment. "What the hell are you wearing?" he barked, trying to regain control of the room. "We have guests coming to take you to the facility in an hour. You are supposed to be in your room resting. Go take that ridiculous thing off and put your pajamas back on. You look like a clown." He took a step toward me, expecting me to cower, expecting me to apologize. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I simply looked at his boots, which were still resting on the velvet cushions of the sofa. "Get your feet down," I said. The voice that came out of me was not the voice he knew. It was lower. It was resonant. It was the voice I used to negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts. Liam stopped. "What did you say to me?" I walked further into the room, the portfolio tucked under my arm. My eyes never left his face. I said, "Get your dirty boots off my sofa. You are sitting on a customized Italian velvet sectional that cost $15,000. And considering you have never contributed a cent to the maintenance of this household, you have not earned the right to ruin the upholstery." Liam laughed, but it was a nervous, jagged sound. He looked at Dante and Jessica, looking for backup. "Did you hear that?" he sneered. "She thinks she owns the place. The drugs are really kicking in now. Audrey, honey, sit down. You are hallucinating again. We rent this place. Remember, Mr. Blackwood lets us stay here." "Mr. Blackwood," I repeated, walking to the coffee table. I picked up his still smoldering cigar from the rug and crushed it into the crystal ashtray. I looked at him. I looked at the fear starting to creep into the corners of his eyes. "There is no Mr. Blackwood, Liam. Blackwood is an anagram. It stands for Old Walk B, which was the street name of the first house I ever flipped when I was 22. I lifted the portfolio and threw it onto the glass table. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud that made the champagne glasses rattle. "Open it," I commanded. Liam stared at the folder. He didn't want to touch it. He sensed that whatever was inside was radioactive. Jessica, brave in her ignorance, leaned forward and flipped the cover open. Her eyes scanned the first document. The deed. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It is the deed to this penthouse," I said, my voice filling the room. "Purchased 3 years ago, paid in full, cash. The buyer is listed as Aurora Holdings. Do you know who the sole signatory of Aurora Holdings is?" I tapped my chest lightly with a manicured finger. "Me." Liam snatched the paper from Jessica's hand. He read it. His hands began to shake. "No," he muttered. "This is fake. You printed this. You are trying to trick us. You are a broke artist. You beg me for grocery money. I begged you for nothing, I corrected him, my tone icy. I allowed you to think you were providing. I deposited $5,000 into your account every month from a shell corporation so you could feel like a man while you paid the bills. I subsidized your ego, Liam, and it was the most expensive tax I have ever paid. I took a step closer to him. You are not tenants. You are guests who have overstayed their welcome. And legally speaking, since I have revoked my consent for you to be here as of 5 minutes ago, you are currently trespassing. Liam collapsed back onto the sofa. The color had drained from his face, leaving him looking sickly and gray. He looked at the walls at the ceiling, realizing that the cage he thought he had built for me was actually my fortress. But why, he stammered. If you have money, why hide it? Why let me humiliate you? Because I wanted to see who you really were, I said. And you showed me. You showed me every single day. I turned my attention to the corner of the room. Dante was trying to inch toward the door, his sunglasses now looking ridiculous in the dim light. Leaving so soon? Dante, I asked. He froze. Look, Audrey, or whatever you are. This is between you and Liam. I just came to help. We are family, right? Family, I scoffed. I walked toward him. He backed away until he hit the sliding glass door. You talk a big game, Dante. The crypto genius, the investor, the man who is going to take us all to the moon. I reached into the portfolio and pulled out a second file, a red file. I did some digging while you were drinking my champagne, I said. I was curious about your portfolio. I wanted to know where you were hiding all that wealth. Dante swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. Hey, privacy laws, man. You can't just... I found it. I interrupted him. Or rather, I found what was missing. I opened the file and read from the top page. Dante Williams. Terminated for cause 3 weeks ago from the Bubbles and Shine car wash on 5th Street. Reason for termination, theft of supplies. Jessica gasped. Dante. You said you were at the firm. You said you were managing hedge funds. I ignored her and continued. Current credit card debt across 7 different cards, $82,400. Status default. Car loan status. Repossession order issued yesterday. I looked up at him. He was sweating now, rivers of perspiration running down his face. You are not a tycoon, Dante. You are a drowning man looking for a life raft. And you thought I was it. Dante looked at Jessica, begging with his eyes. Babe, don't listen to her. She is making it up. It is part of her sickness. It is not a sickness, I said, pulling out the final document. It is a transaction. I held up the paper. I know your debt collectors, Dante. They are not very patient men, but they are businessmen. So I made them an offer. I bought your debt. All of it. Every single cent you owe to Visa, to MasterCard, and to the dealership. I walked over and shoved the paper into the breast pocket of his cheap suit jacket. Congratulations, Dante. I am your new creditor. And unlike the banks, I don't offer payment plans. I want my money, and I want it now. Dante slid down the glass door, his legs giving out. He sat on the floor, head in his hands, a broken man exposed in the harsh light of truth. Jessica stood up, her face twisted in a mask of fury and denial. She stomped her foot like a petulant child. You are lying, she screamed, her voice cracking. You are a liar. You are just a loser who draws pictures. You are unemployed. Liam, tell her she is lying. Tell her we are rich. She ran to Liam, grabbing his shoulders, shaking him. Liam, do something. Throw her out. Liam didn't move. He was staring at the deed in his hand, reading the fine print over and over again. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. The insurance, he whispered. The policy. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. There is no policy, Liam. I canceled it 6 months ago when I found the second syringe in your shaving kit. The only thing you were going to inherit was a funeral bill. Jessica screamed again, a high-pitched, animalistic sound. She grabbed a vase from the side table, a Ming Dynasty replica, and hurled it at me. Shut up! Shut up! You are ruining everything! The vase flew through the air. I didn't flinch. I didn't duck. It sailed past my shoulder and shattered against the wall behind me. Shards of porcelain rained down on the floor. I looked at the broken pieces, then back at Jessica. That will be deducted from your husband's tab, I said calmly. I walked back to the center of the room. I stood between the three of them. The broken husband, the exposed fraud, the hysterical sister. They were a tableau of greed and incompetence. For years you looked at me and saw a victim, I said, addressing the room. You saw a quiet woman and assumed she was stupid. You saw a kind woman and assumed she was weak. You thought because I didn't fight back, I didn't know how to fight. I smoothed the lapel of my white suit. But I wasn't fighting, I said softly. I was accounting. I was keeping a ledger. Every insult, every stolen dollar, every time you made me feel small. I wrote it down. I pointed to the door. And now the bill is due. Liam stood up slowly. He dropped the deed. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. You planned this, he said. You planned this whole weekend. The party, the breakdown. I planned the defense. I corrected him. You provided the attack. I just let you walk into your own trap. He took a step toward me, his hands balling into fists. Violence was always his last resort when his charm failed. You think you can just kick us out, he growled. I am your husband. I have rights. I took out my phone. You have the right to remain silent, I said. I pressed the speed dial button. The speakerphone was loud in the silent room. Send them in, I said. The heavy oak doors of the penthouse entrance burst open. But it wasn't the police. Not yet. It was 4 men in dark tactical suits. My private security detail. They filled the room, their presence imposing professional and terrifying. Liam froze. He looked at the men, then back at me. Who are they? He whispered. They are the eviction committee, I said. I turned to the lead guard, a massive man named Stone. Mr. Stone, please escort these trespassers to the lobby. If they resist, you are authorized to use proportional force. And please make sure Mr. Williams doesn't forget his sunglasses. He is going to need them. It is very bright out on the street. I turned my back on them. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Behind me, the sounds of chaos erupted. Dante was crying. Jessica was screaming obscenities. Liam was shouting legal threats that made no sense. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to watch. I had already seen the ending of this movie 1,000 times in my head. The king was dead. Long live the queen. The moment the security team began dragging Dante and Jessica toward the exit, the reality of the situation finally pierced through the thick armor of Liam's narcissism. He wasn't just losing his audience, he was losing his soldiers. He was standing alone in the middle of the room, stripped of his allies, his dignity, and his delusion of control. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the mask slip completely. There was no more charming husband. There was no more concerned partner. There was only a cornered animal brimming with a violent, impotent rage. You think you can do this to me? He screamed, his voice cracking. I made you. I took you in when you were nothing. You are nothing without me. He lunged. It was a clumsy, desperate motion. He threw himself across the coffee table, his hands reaching for my throat. In his eyes, I saw the intent. He wanted to silence the voice that was speaking the truth. He wanted to crush the neck that refused to bow. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I didn't even blink. Because I knew something he didn't. I knew that Mr. Stone, the head of my security detail, was standing exactly 3 feet to my left. Liam never reached me. A massive hand clamped onto his shoulder, stopping his momentum instantly. It looked effortless, like a human stopping a toy car. Liam gasped as the air was knocked out of him. Mr. Stone twisted Liam's arm behind his back with practiced precision and forced him down onto his knees. The thud of his knees hitting the marble floor echoed through the penthouse. It was a sound of submission, forced but absolute. I looked down at him. He was panting, his face pressed against the cold stone, his expensive suit bunching up around his shoulders. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock and pain. "Get off me!" he yelled, spitting on the floor. "Audrey, tell him to get off me! This is assault!" I walked around him slowly, circling him like a judge inspecting a piece of evidence. I stopped in front of him. I leaned down, bringing my face level with his, but just out of reach. "It is not assault, Liam," I said softly. "It is pest control." I stood up and walked to the wall-mounted iPad that controlled the smart home system. "You wanted to talk about reality, Liam. You wanted to talk about who is crazy and who is sane. Let's listen to some reality. I tapped the screen. I selected the audio file labeled Bedroom Night 001. I turned the volume up to maximum. The speakers built into the ceiling crackled for a second, and then his voice filled the room. It wasn't the shouting voice he was using now. It was the whisper. The cold reptilian whisper from the night he thought I was asleep. Ko len nao kung. Just 3 more doses, sweetheart. Then the doctors will declare you incompetent, and I will finally get that power of attorney signature. The recording was crystal clear. Every syllable was magnified. The malice in his tone was undeniable. Liam stopped struggling. He froze. He listened to his own voice plotting my destruction. His face turned a shade of pale that I had never seen before. It was the color of a man realizing he had been dead for days and just didn't know it. The recording continued. She trusts me blindly. She thinks I am her savior. She thinks I am the only thing standing between her and the abyss. I paused the track. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned back to him. I heard you, Liam, I said. I heard you every single night. I felt your breath on my face while you planned to lock me away. I felt the weight of your betrayal pressing down on the mattress. Liam shook his head, tears of panic streaming down his face. No, that is edited. That is fake AI voice generation. You faked it. I walked back to the desk and picked up a pen. You wanted a signature so badly, didn't you? You were willing to poison me for it. You were willing to gaslight me for it. You were willing to erase my entire existence just to get my name on a piece of paper. I picked up the divorce papers that my lawyer had prepared that morning. They were stapled to a darker, more severe document, the asset seizure and restitution order. I placed the papers on the floor in front of him. Here is your signature, Liam. I uncapped the pen. I bent down and signed my name on the divorce decree. The stroke was bold, aggressive, and final. Then I signed the asset seizure order. There I said, capping the pen, I just gave you exactly what you asked for. I signed the papers. Liam looked at the documents. He tried to read them through his tears. What is this? It is the end of your free ride, I said. I pointed to the watch on his wrist. A Rolex Submariner. He loved that watch. He told everyone he bought it with his bonus check. Take it off, I commanded. What? He clutched his wrist. No, this is mine. Take it off, Liam. I repeated, my voice hard as steel. You bought that watch with the supplementary American Express card I gave you for household emergencies. You claimed it was a business expense. I have the receipts. And since I am the primary account holder and I did not authorize that purchase, that watch is stolen property. I looked at the security guard. Mr. Stone. The guard squeezed Liam's arm. Liam yelped and fumbled with the clasp. He ripped the watch off his wrist and threw it on the floor. Fine. Take it, you petty witch. I wasn't done. The suit, I said. Liam looked at me in horror. You can't be serious. The Tom Ford suit you are wearing, I continued. $3,000, charged to the same card. The shoes, $800. The silk tie, $200. Even the socks, Liam. I leaned in closer. Every single thread on your body was paid for by the woman you called a mouse. You are wrapped in my money. You are wearing my success while you try to steal it. I stood up straight. I reported the card stolen this morning, Liam. I flagged every purchase over $100 made in the last 12 months as fraudulent activity. I told the bank that an unauthorized user had gained access to my PIN. Liam's eyes bulged. You framed me. I didn't frame you, I said. I just corrected the accounting. You were unauthorized, Liam. You were never authorized to break my heart. You were never authorized to poison my body. And you were certainly never authorized to spend my hard-earned money on your delusions of grandeur. I walked to the balcony door and looked down at the street. Flashing blue and red lights reflected off the glass. Do you see the lights, Liam? He craned his neck to look. That is the Chicago Police Department, I said. They are downstairs. They are here to take a statement regarding the grand larceny, the identity theft, and thanks to the sample of the smoothie I saved in the freezer, the attempted poisoning. Liam slumped. His body went limp. The fight went out of him. He wasn't a king anymore. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was just a criminal caught in the headlights. "I didn't poison you," he sobbed, his voice weak and pathetic. "It was just vitamins. I was trying to help you." "Save it for the jury," I said. Mr. Stone pulled him up. Liam couldn't even stand on his own. He was a marionette whose strings had been cut. "Get him out of my sight," I said to the guard. Mr. Stone began to drag him toward the door. Liam looked back at me one last time. His face was a ruin of tears and snot. "Audrey, please," he begged. "I am your husband. We can fix this. I love you." I looked at him. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love. Just the cool, clean feeling of a job well done. "You don't love me, Liam," I said. "You love the lifestyle I provided. And now you are going to love the cell block." I turned my back on him. I heard the door open. I heard him crying as they dragged him down the hallway. I heard the elevator ding, and then silence. I stood alone in my beautiful, expensive, quiet living room. I looked at the divorce papers on the floor. I looked at the empty space where the parasites used to be. I walked over to the smart home panel. I selected a new playlist. Classical, Mozart. The music filled the room, washing away the echo of his whisper. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap. It tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. I was Audrey Sterling. I was 32 years old. I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. And for the first time in 3 years, I was completely, wonderfully alone. I took a sip of water and smiled. The nightmare was over. The morning had finally come. The silence I had briefly enjoyed was shattered by the sound of justice arriving. It was a heavy, metallic sound. The elevator doors slid open, and 4 uniformed officers from the Chicago Police Department stepped into the foyer. They did not look like the guests Liam usually invited. They did not hold champagne flutes or hollow promises. They held warrants, Mr. Stone, my head of security, nodded to the lead officer. He released his grip on Liam, allowing my husband to slump forward onto the marble floor. Liam looked up, his eyes scanning the uniforms, looking for a friendly face, looking for a way out. He found none. Officer Martinez, a woman with eyes as sharp as flint, stepped forward. She didn't look at the expensive art or the panoramic view. She looked directly at the man cowering on the floor. "Liam Reynolds," she said, her voice filling the room with a terrifying finality. "You are under arrest." Liam scrambled backward, his heels skidding on the polished stone. "Arrest? For what? This is a domestic dispute. My wife is having a mental breakdown. You should be arresting her." Officer Martinez ignored him. She reached for her belt and pulled out a pair of handcuffs. The metal caught the light of the chandelier. "You are being charged with 3 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of identity theft, and 1 count of attempted causing of great bodily harm with intent to kill." The words hung in the air. Intent to kill. Liam froze. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. Kill. I just gave her vitamins. "We have the lab report from the smoothie sample your wife provided to her legal team this morning," Martinez said, snapping the cuffs onto Liam's wrists. "The lab found high concentrations of scopolamine and traces of rat poison. That is not a vitamin, Mr. Reynolds. That is a murder weapon." The room seemed to tilt. Jessica gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Dante backed away until he hit the wall, his face draining of all color. "Poison," Jessica whispered. "Liam, you said it was just sleeping pills. You said we were just going to make her sleep so she would sign the papers. You didn't tell us you were killing her." Liam struggled as the officer hauled him to his feet. "Shut up, Jessica, shut up." She spiked it herself. She is framing me. But the denial was weak. It was the desperate lie of a man who realized the walls were not just closing in, they were crushing him. I watched from the doorway of the living room. I stood perfectly still, my arms crossed over the white suit that Liam had mocked just moments ago. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his upper lip. I saw the terror in his eyes, and I felt a profound sense of nothingness. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, was just a small, frightened criminal. "Take him away, officer," I said softly. Liam twisted his head to look at me. His face was a mask of hatred. "You planned this. You waited. You let me dig my own grave. I didn't hand you the shovel, Liam, I said calmly. I just watched you dig. As they dragged him toward the elevator, he began to scream. It wasn't a scream of anger anymore. It was a scream of pure, unfiltered panic. He was realizing that there would be no more Italian leather sofas, no more scotch, no more pretending to be a king. There would only be concrete steel and the long, cold reality of a prison cell. The elevator doors closed, cutting off his screams. The room fell silent again, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Jessica and Dante were still there, standing by the wall, trembling. They looked at the remaining officers. They looked at Mr. Stone. Then, slowly, terrifyingly, they looked at me. Officer Martinez turned to them. Are these the two individuals listed in the restraining order? Yes, I said, walking into the room. Jessica Reynolds and Dante Williams. They are trespassing. And I believe Mr. Williams has several outstanding warrants for credit fraud that you might want to look into. Dante's knees gave out. He slid down the wall, landing in a heap. No, he mumbled. I didn't do anything. I just watched. I didn't know about the poison. Audrey, you have to believe me. I was just here for the free rent. He turned on Jessica, pointing a shaking finger at her. It was her. It was her idea to come here. She said her brother was going to be rich. She said we could live here for free. I told her it was a bad idea, Jessica shrieked, shoving Dante's shoulder. You liar! You begged me to ask Liam for money. You said your crypto business was going to crash if you didn't get 10 grand by Friday. You are the leech. Stop it, I commanded. My voice was not loud, but it stopped them instantly. They looked at me, two rats fighting on a sinking ship. Mr. Stone, I said, remove them. Mr. Stone signaled to his team. Two massive guards stepped forward. They didn't use handcuffs, but their grip was iron. They grabbed Dante by the collar of his cheap suit and Jessica by the arm. Wait, Jessica screamed, digging her heels into the rug. Audrey, please, you can't do this. Where are we supposed to go? We have no money. They took our condo. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, picking up the bottle of vintage Bordeaux that had been sitting on the bar cart. It was a 1982 Petrus. Liam had been saving it for his victory celebration. I decided it was time to open it. Audrey, we are family. Jessica sobbed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We are sisters. I am sorry about the dress. I am sorry about the insults. We were just joking. You know how we are. We have a dark sense of humor. Please don't throw us on the street. It is snowing outside. I paused. I held the wine key in my hand. I looked at Jessica. I remembered the day she moved in. I remembered how she threw my art supplies in the trash because they were clutter. I remembered how she called me a burden while eating the food I paid for. Family, I asked. I walked closer to her. The guard held her back, but she leaned toward me, hope flickering in her eyes. Yes, family, Jessica cried. We can fix this. I will help you. I will testify against Liam. I will tell them everything. Just let us stay in the guest room for a week. Just until we get on our feet. I looked at her desperate, tear-stained face. Family doesn't poison family, Jessica, I said coldly. And family doesn't watch their sister-in-law getting drugged and laugh about it while trying on her clothes. I turned to the guard. Get them out and throw their suitcases in the dumpster. If they want their clothes, they can dig for them. It will be good practice for their new life. No, Audrey. You can't be this cruel, Jessica screamed as the guard dragged her toward the door. I am not being cruel, I said, turning my back on her. I am being fair. Dante was already being hauled out. He was crying, muttering about his credit score, blaming Liam, blaming the economy, blaming everyone but himself. Liam ruined me, Dante wailed as he was shoved through the doorway. He promised me half the insurance money. He is a liar. The heavy oak doors slammed shut. The noise was cut off instantly. I was alone. The apartment was suddenly very big and very quiet. The police were gone. The parasites were gone. The poison was gone. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. It was a cold night in Chicago. The wind was whipping snow against the glass. I could see the flashing blue lights of the police cruisers down on the street 12 stories below. I watched as 3 figures were led out of the building. First came Liam. He was shoved into the back of a squad car. He looked small, defeated. He tried to look up at the penthouse, but the officer pushed his head down to get him into the vehicle. Then came Jessica and Dante. They weren't arrested, but they were ejected. I saw the security guards dump their suitcases on the sidewalk. I saw Dante yelling at the sky. I saw Jessica sitting on her suitcase, burying her face in her hands. They were shivering. They had no coats. They had no car. They had no one to call. I turned away from the window. I walked back to the kitchen island. The bottle of 1982 Petrus was waiting. I picked up the corkscrew. The sound of the cork pulling free was a soft, satisfying pop. It sounded like a breath being released after holding it for 3 years. I poured the dark ruby liquid into a glass. Not the cheap crystal Liam had bought to impress his friends, but a hand-blown glass I had brought back from a trip to Venice, a trip I had taken alone, telling Liam I was visiting a sick aunt so he wouldn't ask for souvenir money. I swirled the wine. I inhaled the aroma. It smelled of dark cherries, earth, and patience. I took a sip. It was perfect. I walked back to the window and looked down one last time. The police cars were driving away, taking my past with them. Jessica and Dante were still on the sidewalk, arguing 2 tiny specks of misery in a city that didn't care about them. I raised my glass to the reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me was not wearing an apron. She was not hunched over a sketchbook. She was standing tall in a white suit, holding a glass of wine that cost more than Dante's car. "Goodbye, Liam," I whispered to the glass. I turned around and looked at my home. My real home. The space felt different now. It felt lighter. The air was cleaner. I walked over to the smart home panel on the wall. The recording of Liam's whisper was still paused on the screen. I pressed the delete button. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete this file?" the system asked. I pressed yes. The file vanished. I took another sip of wine. I wasn't waiting for the doctors to declare me incompetent anymore. I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. I was Audrey Sterling, and I had a company to run. I walked into my studio. The door was still broken where they had forced it open, a jagged scar on the wood. I ran my hand over the splintered frame. I wouldn't fix it immediately. I would leave it for a few days. A reminder. I sat down at my desk. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I didn't pick up a stylus to draw a cartoon. I picked up my fountain pen. I began to draft a memo to my board of directors. Subject: restructuring and new leadership vision. I wrote for hours. The silence of the apartment was my companion, my ally. For the first time in years, I wasn't painting to escape reality. I was designing it. Outside, the snow continued to fall, burying the tracks of the people who had tried to bury me. Inside, it was warm. Inside, it was safe. Inside, the Queen was finally on her throne. 3 months is not a long time in the grand scheme of the universe, but in the life of a woman who has reclaimed her throne, it is an eternity of progress. The winter snow has melted, revealing the hard gray pavement of Chicago, but my life has bloomed into something vibrant and untouchable. I sat in my corner office at the ArtNet Global headquarters, a space of glass and steel that overlooked the very skyline Liam had once claimed was too expensive for me to admire. On the mahogany desk in front of me lay a copy of the latest issue of Forbes magazine. The cover did not feature a loud tech bro or a silver-haired politician. It featured a silhouette, a woman standing in profile against a digital canvas. The headline was bold and uncompromising in white font. "The Shadow Queen." The subtitle read, "How Audrey Sterling Built a Digital Art Empire from Her Kitchen Table While the World Looked the Other Way." I ran my finger over the glossy paper. Liam had spent years telling me I was small. He had spent years telling me I was a supporting character in his movie. He had been so wrong. I was the director of the entire studio. My phone buzzed with notifications. Investment offers partnership requests from galleries in Paris and Tokyo, and interview requests from every major network. I ignored them all. I preferred the silence. I preferred the work. My lawyer Sarah had updated me on the current residence of my ex-husband earlier that morning. Liam was currently a resident of the Stateville Correctional Center. It was a far cry from the penthouse. Sarah told me that the adjustment period had been difficult for him. Apparently the other inmates did not appreciate his arrogance. The man who used to scream at waiters if his steak was slightly overcooked was now eating whatever gray slop was slid onto his metal tray. Sarah mentioned that he had tried to organize a poker game in the common room, attempting to use his old charm to hustle cigarettes. It had ended poorly. He was now washing laundry for the cell block leader, a man serving life who didn't care about Liam's imaginary real estate deals. Liam spent his days scrubbing stains out of prison uniforms, his hands raw and chapped, the same hands he used to wave around while lecturing me about my incompetence. He had sent me letters, dozens of them. They arrived in generic envelopes stamped with the prison seal. I never opened them. I had a shredder next to my desk specifically for them. The sound of the paper tearing was the only response he would ever get from me. But Liam was locked away where I couldn't see him. His punishment was abstract. The punishment for the other two accomplices, however, was much more tangible. I checked my watch. It was 8 in the morning. It was time to leave for my quarterly site inspection. I took the private elevator down to the lobby of my residential building. When I had purchased the debt of Dante and Jessica, I hadn't just demanded repayment. I had offered them a path to solvency. Since they had no assets, no skills, and criminal records for fraud that prevented them from getting corporate jobs, I had leveraged my influence with the building management company, which I also held a controlling interest in, to find them employment. They needed jobs. The building needed janitors. It was a perfect match. I stepped out of the elevator. The lobby was bathed in morning light, the marble floors gleaming. The smell of lemon antiseptic hung in the air. I saw them immediately. Dante was near the concierge desk. He was no longer wearing his fake designer suits or his sunglasses. He was wearing a gray jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big for him. It bagged around his knees and shoulders, stripping him of any semblance of shape or dignity. He was holding a heavy industrial mop, pushing it back and forth across the white stone. He looked tired. His face was gaunt, the swagger completely erased. He wasn't talking about crypto. He wasn't talking about the moon. He was looking at the scuff marks on the floor, focused entirely on erasing the dirt of people wealthier than him. Jessica was by the main entrance. She was wearing a matching gray uniform, her hair tied back in a severe, unflattering bun. She held a bottle of glass cleaner and a rag. She was wiping fingerprints off the revolving door. The same door she had breezed through 3 months ago with her suitcases, acting like she owned the place. I walked across the lobby. My heels clicked rhythmically on the floor. It was a sharp, authoritative sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged space. Dante heard it first. He froze. He stopped mopping. He gripped the handle of the mop so tightly, his knuckles turned white. He didn't look up. He couldn't. The shame was a physical weight pushing his head down. He stared at his work boots, cheap rubber boots issued by the management, and waited for me to pass. He made himself small. He made himself invisible. He was finally the person he had accused me of being. Jessica turned as I approached the door. She saw me. For a second, her old instinct flared up. Her eyes widened and her mouth opened as if she wanted to say something snarky, something cruel. But then she looked at my clothes. She looked at the briefcase in my hand, and then she looked down at the rag in her own hand. The reality of her position crashed down on her. She wasn't my equal. She wasn't my rival. She was the help. She quickly turned back to the glass, spraying it vigorously, scrubbing at a spot that wasn't there. She was terrified that I would speak to her. She was terrified that I would complain to her supervisor. She knew that one word from me could end this job, and without this job, she would be on the street. I walked between them. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop to gloat. I didn't make a witty remark. I didn't even look at them. To look at them would be to acknowledge them. To acknowledge them would be to give them power, and they had absolutely no power left. I walked past Dante's hunched form. I walked past Jessica's trembling back. I walked through the revolving door that Jessica had just cleaned for me. The cold air outside was bracing and fresh. My driver was waiting at the curb, holding the door of the black sedan open. "Good morning, Mrs. Sterling," he said. "Good morning, Arthur," I replied with a smile. I slid into the car. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the building. I didn't look back at the lobby. I opened my laptop and started reviewing the projections for the next quarter. The rearview mirror showed the city shrinking behind me, but I kept my eyes forward. There was so much work to do. There were new horizons to conquer. The past was just a dirty floor, and I had people to clean that up for me now. They called me a mouse because I walked softly. They called me weak because I chose not to scream. They mistook my patience for submission and my silence for compliance. That was their fatal error. In a world that constantly rewards the loudest voice in the room, men like Liam and Dante forgot a fundamental truth of nature. The predator that roars is warning you. The predator that is silent is already hunting you. My story is not just about a bad marriage or a greedy in-law. It is a testament to the power of holding your cards close to your chest until the very last second. Liam thought he was playing chess with a novice, but he didn't realize that while he was moving his pawns and bragging about his strategy, I had already bought the board, the table, and the building they were sitting in. He measured power by the volume of his voice and the shine of his watch. I measured power by the ink on the contracts and the balance in the accounts he never knew existed. If there is one lesson you take away from my journey, let it be this: never mistake silence for weakness. Silence is observation. Silence is calculation. Silence is the gathering of the storm before it breaks. And never ever make the mistake of waking a lion that is pretending to sleep, because when that lion wakes up, it does not want an apology. It wants a meal. I walked out of that relationship not just with my fortune intact, but with my dignity sharpened into a blade. I refused to let them write my narrative. I refused to be the crazy wife or the victim. I wrote my own ending, and I signed it with the very pen they tried to steal from me. Now I want to hear from you. I know many of you have dealt with people who underestimated you, people who mistook your kindness for blindness. Watching Liam crumble was my personal victory, but sharing it with you has been the true celebration. I am dying to know which moment of their downfall felt the most satisfying to you. Was it the moment I played Liam's whisper back to him, letting him hear his own betrayal echoing through the house he thought he controlled? Or was it the moment Dante was exposed as a car wash employee after pretending to be a crypto tycoon, realizing his sunglasses couldn't hide his failure anymore? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if you enjoyed watching the mouse eat the cat, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There are so many more stories of justice, resilience, and the quiet power of women waiting to be told. Turn on those notifications so you never miss a moment of vindication. Until next time, remember to walk softly, keep your eyes open, and never be afraid to show your teeth when the time is right.